after Cornel West's interview with Anderson Cooper, which is getting a lot of play now, obviously, Anderson Cooper went to his friend fresh out of the bayous and swamps of Louisiana. This creature, this thing, James Carville, brings him on to talk about Cornel West as a spoiler candidate. Now, a lot of the mainstream pundits have been trying to sort of charm Cornel West into playing ball, right? Are you sure you want to do this? We like you. We respect you. You know, we love you, man. But you're really taking
more of that
here.
George Floyd moral vision stuff,
right? More of the kumbaya unity stuff, right? Less of the threatening to disrupt democracy thing, right? So they go to James Carville, who just doesn't have it in him not to be a completely obnoxious prick every minute of every day. It takes Carville half a sentence before insulting Dr. West. Let's hear James Carville do the post-game of the Cornel West Anderson Cooper interview.
Dr. West, what is your reaction to... You hear Dr. West? What is your reaction to what he had to say? Do you think he rejects the term spoiler candidate. Do you think he could be?
Well, first of all, he's obviously an accomplished scholar, academic. He seems to be a very charming man. And he's also a menace to the threat of the continued constitutional order in the United States.
See, he gave him half a sentence. Half a sentence is all the diplomacy this guy's capable of, right? Well, you know, he's a scholar and a charming man, and he's also a menace to the future of our democratic institutions.
He's obviously an accomplished scholar, academic. He seems to be a very charming man. And he's also a menace to the threat of the continued constitutional order in the United States. And if I say that because look what Ralph Nader...
By the way, this guy ran the Bill Clinton war room in 1992. This guy headed up a task force within the Bill Clinton campaign to silence any bimbos who came forward, quote unquote. Bimbo eruptions. That's how they called. That's how they talked about these women, not mine, not me. These bimbos were women who had made credible accusations of sexual violence against his good friend, Bill Clinton. So James Carville is a menace to humanity. He is a stain on the human race. This guy's a worthless, vile piece of garbage. And he comes out and says, Cornel West, yeah, he's a handsome, well, what does he say? He's a scholar, he's a charming man, but now he's a menace to democracy. Whenever these people say someone is a threat to democracy, what they mean is they're a threat to the Democratic Party. That's what they mean. When they say democracy, that's code for Democratic Party, right?
Well, and this, so much of this, we're looking at more corporate media tonight than we usually do on the show. This is on the occasion that you get stuck arguing with a liberal, like this is why they fucking their brains are like pudding, because this is what they take in, like that James Carville formulation. This is something you have to give him credit for, right? He really has his finger on the pulse of the shit libs. That is a very shit lib kind of formulation. They like that kind of thing. That's their idea of nuance, right? Yeah, now I have a lot of respect for Cornel West, but he's going to bring down the constitutional order with this with this nonsense that he's doing. It's really upsetting because I like him. I like him a lot. He made me cry once, but now I don't know why he wants to burn down the country and make Trump the president again.
Right.
A charming man. And he's also a menace to the threat of the continued constitutional order in the United States.
By the way, this is the least unhinged thing he says in this rant, by the way. We'll wait till you see what comes next.
And if I say that because look what Ralph Nader was directly responsible for the election of George W. Bush, which brought about this horrific Iraq war and this horrific...
Oh, the horrific Iraq war, because your host here doesn't seem to remember it as being all that horrific. Right? Anderson Cooper just said to Cornel West in the interview, well, terrible things happen in war, but you really can't compare what we did in Iraq to the Russian bombing of Grozny in the 90s. No, I mean, that's apples and oranges.
Well, you know what? Set aside the Supreme Court. Forget about the Supreme Court in Gore v. Bush, right? Forget about that. You are a political strategist, you know damn well that Jeb Bush, the candidate's brother, who was the governor of Florida at the time, ran around Florida disenfranchising black people left and right for vague reasons to the tune of tens of thousands of people, far more than the margin in that race. Why don't you ever butterfly ballots? Forget about that even. The brother of the candidate rigged that fucking election in the state. This is something that's down the memory hole. You'll never hear talked about now.
Right.
They were together, obviously, watching the election returns. And when it looked good for Gore, Jeb apologized. He apologized to the family. Yep. They never talk about it. What is he apologizing for? What does he have to do with how a free and fair election turns out? What did he have to apologize for? He's apologizing for not rigging the state good enough. So why the fuck are you care so much about democracy and the Democratic Party and the fact that George Bush shouldn't have been president? What the fuck are you talking about, Ralph Nader? Aren't you talking about Jeb Bush?
Yeah, plus you guys don't really seem to look back on those Bush years with all that much regret. Anderson Cooper just told Cornel West, well, come on, let's be fair. You know, bad things happen in war, right? Well, I mean, maybe he wasn't watching. Maybe he wasn't watching.
Well, what was the real difference?
Maybe he was picking the fucking crawfish out of his teeth getting ready for this interview. Maybe he didn't see the actual interview where Anderson Cooper told Cornel West, hey, you know, the Iraq war, yeah, bad things happen, but come on, let's be reasonable. Let's not compare our war crimes to Russia's war crimes, right? That's inappropriate. Inappropriate was the word he used.
Of course, because it's us.
Inappropriate, right? Exactly.
Economic downturn we had, among other things. Jill Stein, who's his campaign manager, is almost certainly an agent of the Russian government. If you don't believe me, somebody at home Google photo General Flynn, Vladimir Putin, Jill Stein. She was hosted by the Russians prior to her.
If you don't believe me, Google photo General Flynn, Vladimir Putin, Jill Stein. The fact that they were seen together in a room is incontrovertible proof that she is an agent of the Russian state. Really? That's incontrovertible proof. Yeah. Incontrovertible proof. Yeah, Vladimir Putin wants to undermine our democracy so badly that he chose to infiltrate a party that in its decades-long existence has accomplished little more than electing a mayor in a small town in upstate New York. Like, the Green Party is a virtually powerless organization. You're telling me Jill Stein is an agent of the Russian state. She's almost certainly an agent of the Russian state. And if you don't believe me, go to Google and look up where she's seen sitting at a table with Vladimir Putin. Guess who else has been seen sitting at tables with Putin? Hillary Clinton has been seen sitting at tables with Vladimir Putin. How do we know there wasn't more to that image than what meets the eye? Right? I mean, what a fucking unhinged maniac.
In fact, a lot of people say that the reason that they focused so much on smearing Trump with Russia connections was they were pulling a Karl Rove. They wanted to take that focus off of their
No, that's documented. They were afraid. They were afraid. That's not. Yeah, no, that's been actually very, very thoroughly documented that they saw as Hillary's weak spot her ties to Russia. And so, yes, as Russell says, the old Karl Rove playbook is take what should be a liability for your campaign and make it a liability for the other campaign.
Yeah,
right?
It's judo.
Exactly.
And I also, you know, a lot of our people have probably seen this before. But for those of you who haven't, just to remind you of who James Carville is. So he was running Bill Clinton's campaign. So presumably this was his idea. Okay. So these are the people who talk about the racism of the Republicans that they have to save you from. This is Bill Clinton announcing his campaign with, as you can see, a phalanx of black prisoners behind him. But the kicker here, speaking of coded locations to choose to hold an event at. This is Stony Mountain Correctional Facility. Stony Mountain, some of you might know, is the birthplace of the KKK. Certainly, Bill Clinton knew that. James Carville, who, as the campaign manager, would have made the arrangements to do this, and it was probably his idea, certainly knew that. And this is who's sitting here on TV right now, smearing Cornel West by implication and association as somehow, at best, a useful idiot, the man who set this up.
Yep.
In 2016. So, people are going to have to decide, do we want to continue under our Constitution? Because Donald Trump is telling us that very clearly, is bragging about the fact that he doesn't want to live under the Constitution anymore. And it's very clear that the only thing that Dr. West's candidacy can do is help elect Donald Trump. It's nothing. I don't think any of that's inarguable, nor is it arguable that Jill Stein had deep relationships with the Russian government.
So let me ask you, because the argument that Ralph Nader put forward, the argument that Jill Stein has put forward, Dr. West mentioned it again tonight, that a lot of those people who voted for Jill Stein or Ralph Nader would not have voted for any of the mainstream candidates, and therefore they did not suck away votes from Hillary Clinton or would not hurt votes from Biden here.
Well, how could I argue with that? I'm sure that some of it's true, some of it's not true.
I mean, there's no way to know whether somebody could tell a pollster, oh, no, of course I wouldn't vote for any other candidate, but who knows how people would vote.
I can't disprove that.
Okay, well, if you can't disprove that, then you really can't prove that Cornel West is going to cost Joe Biden the election. Now, of course, my response to this, as you all know by now, is we wash our hands of it. We say, yeah, there's a good chance he will. We don't care. We don't care. Non-responsive, as John Heilman over on MSNBC would say.
Fuck that fucking parakeet.
Irrelevant. Right. Fuck that fucking parakeet. Doesn't matter. We're running anyway. Look at how paralyzed they are. That's what's great about this Cornel West candidacy so far. Regardless of his performance. Look at how scared they are, but how unable they are to do anything about it. All they can do is bitch about it. They cannot do anything else because they can't push Biden out of the way. They can't make some excuse for Biden to withdraw because then they got a Kamala problem. Like, they can't do anything. All they can do is fret and bitch to their friends about it. And to their audience. Like, there's nothing any of them can do. They're just completely fucked. The only way that they can avoid disaster is by convincing Cornel to lay down his arms. And that, to answer Ellen's question and anybody else who has doubts about why we should back Cornel West, that is as big a reason as any, because we have to signal to Cornel West, as many people have to signal to Cornel West right now, that we have his back, because what we cannot afford to happen is for these ghouls to bully him into stepping down. Because once that happens, they've won.
And if you look at this in the last two shows, we've had Android pretending to be human, Caitlin Collins doing this panicked interview with him, in so much as the servers in her face allow her to express panic. And here you have Anderson Cooper doing this panicked interview about Cornel West. You have Anderson Cooper interview Cornel West. As far as I'm concerned, our theory of the case of anyone who backed this as a kind of way to burn down the system, we've been vindicated. Have you seen that they're not even paying attention to Marianne? They bring her on every now and then as a joke. And RFK, I don't even see them bring him on. They talk about him more. I think they're afraid he's going to say something about the jab that they don't want him to say, so they don't bring him on at all, really. I mean, almost never do they bring RFK onto any of these channels. At most, they'll mention him. Look how much fucking attention Cornel West is getting. And I say it's the Trump principle. Matt Taibbi described perfectly what a lot of the secret of Trump's success was. He said he identified the vulnerability in the Death Star that is the American media. They can't help but cover a story that's going to get them viewers. They can't resist it. Even if they know that it's going to hurt them, they can't turn away. They have to cover it. I honestly didn't expect it to work this well or this fast, but it seems like that's happening with Cornel West, that like it's such a story that it seems like they can't look away from it.
Well, that's the remarkable thing, is how quickly they have begun to utterly melt down over this.
Right.
We're not even past Labor Day of the year before the election.
Right.
We're in the summer of 2023. They usually ignore everything at this phase. At this phase, the presidential campaign is usually like a side story, right? Because there haven't even been primary debates yet. We are so early on in this process. And for them to be fretting over this much, this early, is a terrific sign. Let's let them keep going.
Nor what I want to, but what I do know, there was Russian help that were telling black voters in Detroit to vote at the wrong place.
All right, easy. I'm going to cut you off halfway through that because I don't want you spewing anything that's going to trip the censor on this fucking channel. I'd hate to get thrown off the air because of this fucking prick, right? But yeah, I telling them to vote the wrong. How many people came forward and said that they were actually given the wrong information about when to vote after the election? How many people came? You didn't hear fuck all about that. You didn't hear fuck all about it. He's such a fucking whiny little bitch, this guy. All of them. They're just the most repulsive people on the planet. And what is the insinuation now? Because Jill Stein sat at a table with Vladimir Putin, you're now saying that Cornel West is somehow implicated in a foreign plot to subvert the next like that is what you're saying. That is what you're saying. But look at this patchwork case that you're trying to make for this.
Vote on Wednesday and not Tuesday. I do know. I do know that Jill Stein was in Moscow, was sitting with General Michael Flint, with Vladimir Putin, was on Russian TV from Red Square, attacking the United States herself. And I do know, I'm told, that's his campaign manager, and it's the same outfit that cost us the election in 2000, could have very well cost us the election in 2016. And I'm just sitting here with a clear present warning: don't fall for this. Do not fall for this. Only bad can come about this.
What's hilarious about this is that he's really preaching to a choir of the converted, and
who's watching CNN?
That's the thing, and that's the thing where like I don't even know, as much as I enjoy watching them panic. So like I enjoy watching them interview Cornel West because it's just fun to watch them quiver. Like I don't know what the upside is really for him to go on CNN, because like part of why I think the Democratic Party is dead is because I think that the viewers of CNN, which are Democratic primary voters, are unreachable, right? So, like, I don't know what the efficacy is for Cornel West to go on the Anderson Cooper show. I mean, I guess there's no such thing as bad press to a certain extent, right? But I don't really know what the payoff is.
You know what? I'm going to answer that. I have said many, many, many times on this show, I was as shitlib, as much of a corporate media addled Democratic vote blue no matter who person as you're going to meet. And you know what? Bernie Sanders went on those shows and he reached me. He made me think.
I mean, that's fair enough. In that case, though, like if that's the goal, being there, then I think what apparently was Jimmy's critique is probably right, that you have to be more confrontational, right? You have to be more forceful, because Cornel handled Caitlin Collins fairly well. He did most of the talking there. Caitlin Collins is not the pro that Anderson Cooper is. She got the job a few weeks ago. This guy's been in the game for 30 years, right? He knows how to dominate a conversation. And I think, unfortunately, for most of that conversation, he got a lot more of the talking in.
Please clap.